Hey yarn friends, welcome back to LlamaMamaKayla's Yarn Tube. I appreciate you stopping by today to see what I'm making, and I am making a pumpkin pocket shawl. Not really a shawl, more of a scarf today. And so I have made the scarf itself. You can see the scarf. And then I have made pumpkins and sewn them on as pockets. So this is actual pockets here on both. So it is the pumpkin pocket shawl loom knitted. So anyway, I'm fixing to get started working on this, and I just wanted to show you what I used. For mine, I used the Craft Smart, the new Craft Smart yarn in the colorway Cinnamon is what I used for my scarf. And then for the pumpkin, I used this carrot color for my pumpkin. And then for the little curly Q here, I used Frosty Green by Red Heart. And then for my stem there, I used Red Heart Super Saver in Cafe Latte. Okay, and so I used this green loom to make the scarf. I just used one side from this peg here all the way to this peg here is what I used to make the scarf. And then I used a small gauge loom to make the pumpkin and the stem and the curly Q. Now you don't have to have a straight stick like this. You can use like a round hat loom if you have that 80 peg KB or something like that, or even maybe the smaller ones, as long as you have 30 pegs. The pumpkin uses 30 pegs across. So it can be a round loom, or even your S loom, the small gauge S loom or something like that. As long as it's small gauge loom and you have at least 30 pegs on it. Because even if you use a round loom, once you take this off, it's going to lay flat. So that's what I used. So, and you will need scissors, your loom pick, also a tapestry needle. I think that's the only extra things I needed. So let's get started. I got to get this made. Okay, to get started, I want to let you know that I use this Craft Smart yarn that is 215 yards, and I used about 1.5 of skeins for the length that I was making to fit the person that I was making it for, which was a teenager. So depending on your height, you may need to use more yarn or less yarn. I can't tell you a total numbers of rows to complete because we're all different lengths, heights, and so we'll need it different lengths. But I'm going to tell you how to figure that out. Okay, if you want to use a loom pin, go ahead and put your yarn through that before we get started. Sometimes you can slide it through like that. Sometimes you might need something like a long needle to poke it through. But it went through that way. So I'm going to make a slip knot, and I'm going to place that on peg 1. Excuse me. Okay, and so I'm going to E-wrap all the way down the loom to do an E-wrap cast on. Oops. Okay, and then I'm going to push all the pegs down not pegs, but the loops on the pegs. Alright, and then I'm just going to E-wrap all the way back down. Oops. Okay, so I E-wrapped down and got all my pegs. Now we just bring the bottom loop over the top loop and over the top of the peg. Okay, and for the start of our scarf, so that our ends does not curl, we are going to do a few rows of E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, purl. So this is our row of E-wrap. Okay, so this next row, oops, I popped off down here. Okay, so on this next row, we are going to purl this row. So we'll just purl all the way down every peg for this row. So I will meet you back in just a moment when I have finished purling. Okay, so I have completed my row of E-wraps and purls. Now, in order to make this video clip shorter and not as long, I'm going to pretend like I have done that 4 times. So what I'm telling you is that you would want to pause your video now, and you would want to E-wrap back, purl this way, E-wrap this way, and purl this way. And we've done it once here on my loom, so you want to do that 3 more times so that you have a total of 4 sets of E-wrap purl. Okay, so I'm pretending that I have done E-wrap purl 4 times. So I'm going to E-wrap all the way back down. Okay, so we have E-wrapped all the way back down, and we are going to just yarn over. Okay, and so we are getting ready to start. We've done kind of like, I guess you could call it the border around the scarf. So now we're ready to start the scarf itself. And I'm going to give you some tips on that. Ways to tell, what's going on here. Okay. Alright, so on your scarf part, you finished your border on the scarf part. We still need a border around the edges of the scarf. So we're always going to purl these 3 when we are going in this direction. So go ahead and purl, purl, purl right here. My yarn went on the wrong side. Okay, so we purled the first 3, and we're always going to do that when we're going in this direction. So now we're going to E-wrap. Okay, until you get to these last 3. If you're going in this direction, you're going to purl. Okay. So we've purled the first 3 and we purled the last 3 because we're going in this direction. Now we're going to yarn over all our E-wraps that's in the middle. And we can push all of our stitches down a little. Oops, I missed a peg on E-wrapping. But since this is just a, we won't leave a leg on there. So I'm just going to leave that loop. Okay. So, going in, when you're going in this direction, going that way, you purl every peg. Okay. And then you would yarn over. Sorry. You would yarn over every peg. And then you would come back down here after you've done all the pegs. And you're going this direction. So you're going to purl these first 3. Then you would E-wrap all the way down till you get to these last ones, and you're going to purl these 3 if you're going that direction, and then if you're going back the other direction, you E-wrap every peg. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. So, in saying all that, I will meet back up with you when you get your scarf the length that you want it. So just keep going and going and going until you are happy with that. And basically you want it from fingertips down by your side with the scarf draped over your shoulders and coming down the other side down to your fingertips. So once you get, a good long ways, more than one skein most likely, try it over your shoulder. You're going to want one side at your fingertip down by your side, and then see how far it comes around your other arm, across your shoulders and you're down your arm. And when you get it from fingertip to fingertip, that's the length you need. And so I will meet you back up and I will show you how to end the scarf. Okay, so once you have your scarf at the length that you want your scarf to be, get to a point where you are E-wrapping back across your loom. E-wrap all the way down, just like you would normally do if you were going in this direction. Okay, so then you're going to bring your loops over. I'm sorry, I was trying to check on the dog. She's okay. Alright, so yarn over all your loops after you E-wrap back down your loom as you normally would. And we are about to start the bind off section. So that was an E-wrap row, and now we're going to do a purl row. Okay. We would normally purl these first 3 pegs, right? This time we're going to purl the whole row. Because remember when we cast on, we did E-wrap purl, E-wrap purl, E-wrap purl, E-wrap purl. We did 4 E-wrap purls. So we need to do 4 E-wrap purls to cast off. So we're going to E-wrap this whole row. And you're going to repeat this for a total of 4 sets of E-wrap purl. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video and let you continue to E-wrap and purl your 4 sets. So purl down, then E-wrap back, purl all the way down, E-wrap back, purl all the way down to complete the 4 sets of E-wrap purl. And then I will meet you back up when I finish that for the taking it off the loom. Okay, I have completed my 4 sets of E-wrap purl, E-wrap purl. So I've just finished a purl row. So I'm going to E-wrap to match up with our E-wrap cast on. I'm going to E-wrap all the way down. And then yarn over the whole row. And then we're going to be ready to take our scarf off of the loom. We're going to do a flat bind off so that this end of the scarf stays the same size as our first end. All right. Now we are done with that E-wrap row, and so what we're going to do is get our yarn. We do want to make sure that we get a long piece of yarn. Okay, that's 1 length, 2, 3, maybe even about 4 lengths. Excuse me, because we want to make sure we have enough yarn. If we run out, we can tie more on, but I really would prefer just to use a straight strand. All right, I'm going to take my lumen pin off. Oh, and I got it tangled up. Uh-oh. Okay, I'm going to take that off my yarn. Okay, so to do this flat bind off, let me try to get the camera where you can see good. We're going to lay our yarn across the first peg and go to the second peg. Scoop down through the top of the loop, pick up your yarn, and pull it all the way through. And you can do this on a needle if you want to. And then place your yarn back over the first. Now we're going to go up from the bottom and grab our yarn and pull it all the way through. Alright, and now we're going to lay it over the second peg, and now we're going to the third peg. We scoop it up and pull it up through the top, all the way through. And then we go back to the second peg and lay it across the top. Reach in from the bottom and grab it and pull it all the way. Now this is time consuming, but it will give us a nice finished edge, and it won't bunch up our edging so that they're not the same size. We want both of our ends to be the same size. So this is time consuming, but it's worth it. And just go back to the other peg and scoop up and pull it all the way through. Okay, I'm going to show you one more time, and then I'm going to pause and let you do the rest on your own. So lay it across this peg, like across one peg. On the next peg, scoop up the yarn and pull it all the way up the top. My hand is cramped up, I'm sorry. Pull it all the way up the top and out, and then you're going to lay it, go back one peg, lay it across, scoop up, pull your yarn down, and pull it all the way through. So just continue that all the way down your loom. Okay, I'm almost finished with this bind off. Like I said, I know that this bind off is time consuming. It takes some work. My arms get very tired, but the bind off is really, really worth it. Okay, so I'm on the last two pegs now. All right, and I'm going to go back up this peg one more time. The very last peg. I've already went through it once, went back to this peg, and now I'm going to do this peg one more time. All right, so now we have our bind off, and so we can pop all of our loops off of the loom. Okay, so we can move our looms out of the way. And now we have this flat, straight bind off. So I'm going to secure this. I don't need that much yarn. Let's secure this end. I'm just going to go back through there and tie this off good. I'll probably do that twice because I like to do things twice. And then on the back side, I'm just going to run this yarn up. Kind of weave it in. And I'm going to do that one more time, just to weave it in really well. Okay, so that's one end. Excuse me while I get my ends together. Oops. So you can see that my ends are both big. That doing that flat bind off, and it kind of is stretched out a little bit, but it'll get it'll relax and get a little better as we work with our yarn. Okay, so now we're on to the next part. Okay, let's get started working on the pumpkin for the pockets. All right, and for this, you're going to need a small gauge loom. Now, this is a KB loom. You can also use a round hat loom as long as it's small gauge. It doesn't have to be a straight stick like this. You could use a Martha Stewart stick of pegs in small gauge. You might have a Cindywood loom that's round for hats or something that's small gauge. Any kind of small gauge loom. It can be round or it can be flat, straight. It doesn't matter. Because even if it's round, it's still going to lay flat when you take it off. Okay, so you want to get some washi tape, some masking tape, even Scotch tape would work. Something like that. And we're going to number pegs 1 to 30. You can see mine is numbered down, but for this pumpkin, we're going to be using pegs 1 through 30. So I have mine numbered, every 5 numbered, and then I can just easily tell, like 17's right here, or, 23 would be right here. If you want to number each one, that's perfectly fine too, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, and we are using 1 strand of yarn. Okay, and I'm just going to leave enough tail that I can weave in the tail at the end. Alright, and we are starting on peg 7. 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to place my yarn with slip knot and tighten it up on peg 7. Okay, I'm going to try to do this without my hands in the way as much as possible, but you can imagine it will be at points at times because it's the only way to get it done. Okay, so we're starting on peg 7, and we're going to E-wrap through peg 24. So this is going to be, we're starting at the bottom of the pumpkin. Okay, so go to peg 24. I have my peg 25 marked, so I know that's 24. Okay, We E-wrapped down, but we are going to purl back to peg 7. I'm assuming that you know how to purl by now. If you need a video on how to purl, I do have one on my channel. Okay. About halfway done. I thought it was a little closer. Oops. Okay. Now we are back to peg number 7. And that's the peg we started on. So I want to tell you that we E-wrapped down and we purled back. That counts as row 1. Both directions is row 1. Okay, for row 2, we are going to add 2 pegs. Excuse me. We're going to add 2 pegs on each end. So here we add 1 peg and 1 peg, and then we E-wrap all the way down. Okay, and we're working on row 2 now. Okay, so we need to add 2 pegs down here. Now down here we need to E-wrap this peg 1 time, E-wrap this peg 2 times, E-wrap this peg 1 time, E-wrap that peg twice. Okay, now let's pull the bottom loops up over the tops. Okay, and just bring your yarn over the tops of the peg. Okay, now we have to purl all the way back down. Our first peg is peg 5 now. So we gotta go all the way back down to peg 5. Remember, you do have the ability to speed up or slow down any YouTube video. Look for that gear button and click on it, and you can change the speed of the video to work for you. We're almost done with row 2. So row 2 consisted of going all the way down and all the way back. In this project, that counts as 1 row. Okay, that is row 2. Okay, so now we need to look at row 3, and we are going to add 2 more pegs. So row 3 is going to take us down to peg 1. Now when you're adding pegs this way, you just need to wrap it 1 time and 1 time, because you're going to wrap those pegs again when you're headed back down. When you're wrapping in this direction and you need to add pegs, you're going to need to wrap that peg twice as you're going down. Okay, so does that make sense? If you're going in that direction, you wrap it once because you're going to come back in this direction. And if you're going in this direction, go ahead and wrap it twice. Okay. Now we got to throw all these bottom loops over. All right, now we got to purl back. So we just get busy purling. Okay, we're almost back to peg 3. right. So we are back down here to peg 3. Fitty. Okay. So that was row 3. Okay, so for row 4 is going to be the same as row 3. So I'm going to turn off the camera and let you go ahead and complete row 4 all the way down and all the way back, and I will meet you when I have finished row 4. Okay, we completed row 4, and row 4 was a repeat of row 3. Okay, so now for row 5, we are going to add 1 peg. So now we're on peg 2. And we're going to E-wrap all the way down. And we're going to add peg 29. Okay. So we added 1 peg on each end. You wrap that over. Yarn it over. Okay, so this is row 5. Remember, it's not a complete row until you purl back here. So row 5 and row 6 are exactly the same. So go ahead and do row 5 and then do the same exact row one more time for row 6. And then we'll meet again. Okay, I completed row 5 and row 6. All right, and so for row 7, we are going to add peg 1. And down at this end, we're going to add peg 30. And that is the whole width of our project, our pumpkin. Okay. Okay, this is the whole width of the pumpkin. So, this is row 7, but it's not completed until we purl back down to the first peg. All right, so row 7 through row 18 is exactly the same. So after you finish row 7, keep going until you reach row 18. And then I will meet back up with you and we will start decreasing. All right, see you guys in just a minute. Okay, so I have completed row 18. So for row 19, we're going to decrease 1 peg on both ends. So just lift it up and bring it in 1 peg. There we go. And so now we just simply E-wrap. My yarn split. Okay. And then we just take both strands. You can do them one at a time or you can do them both together. And just yarn that over, and then you're going to purl back. So we're going to yarn over the whole row, and then purl the whole row, and that will be row 19. So actually row 19 and row 20 are exactly the same. So I will meet back up with you when I have finished row 20. Okay, I completed row 20. So now for row 21, we are going we are going to decrease by 1. So move peg over to the next peg. Stitch over. Okay, and so now we just go ahead and E-wrap. All the way down, and then we're going to purl all the way back for row 21, and row 22 and 23. Excuse me. Row 21, 22, and 23 are the same. So once you complete row 23, we'll meet back up. Okay, I have finished up to row 23, and we are ready to start row 24. So for 24, we are going to decrease by 1 peg. So we're going to take a loop off of the 3rd peg and place it on peg 4. And the same thing over here, we're going to take the loop off of peg 28 and place it on 27. Okay, and then we're just going to E-wrap. All right, now we need to purl back to complete row 24. Okay, so now we have completed row 24. So for row 25, we are going to decrease by 2. So I'm going to just move loops over. Same thing on this end. And you out. And this is our next to the last row. Okay, so now purl. Okay, we are almost finished with row 25. And getting ready to do row 26, which is our very last row for the pumpkin. Okay. So for row 26, we are going to move 3 loops over to peg 9. Same thing on this end. If you have trouble moving them, if it's too tight to move one all the way, move it one peg. Alright, so now we need to E-wrap this short little row. Phoebe. Okay, now. Well. Okay, now purl back. And we are just about completed our 26th row of our pumpkin pocket. So now we're going to take it off the loom and we are going to use a flat bind off. So that the pumpkin stays nice and flat and doesn't bunch up the end. Okay. So your pumpkin should look something like this. And on one side it probably looks pretty rounded. The other side it might look a little bit boxy, but that's fine. I don't know why it always turns out like that on one side, but that's fine because when you're sewing it on, it's going to come up a little more rounded. Okay. And the top part might look a little diagonal because the truth is the pumpkin could not be any wider than 30 pegs. And to get the pumpkin inside the 30 pegs to fit the scarf, had to end up like this on the top. Okay, so to bind off, we are going to get a long tail. Get a little bit longer thread. I mean, I would go about 3.5 times of that. And I might have just cut it too short, but it does take a bit of a tail to do this. And so we're going to do that flat bind off where you lay the yarn across peg 1, on peg 2, pull it up, go back on peg 1 and pull it down. I know this bind off is time consuming, as I've said before, but it is worth it in the end. Just trying not to do that. Okay, here next to the last, I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to go back up in the last peg again. Okay, now we can just pop all our stitches off the pegs. Okay, and now we have our pumpkin shape. Alright, so now we can take our strands and weave them in. We don't have enough tail to sew our pumpkin on, so we're going to go ahead and tie this off and weave this strand in and this strand on the back side of the pumpkin, and then we'll add a new yarn to sew it onto the scarf. So you can just take your tails and if you want to tie them off to secure them into place, and then just go up under some stitches. But make sure your needle is not on the outside of your material. And then you can just snip off the tail after you've weaved back and forth 2 or 3 times. And the same thing for the top. Get a little bit more manageable tail. I'm going to tie it off to secure that. Okay, and you can tie it off 2 times if you'd like. Surprisingly, that one time felt good enough for me. Okay, after you've went through some stitches, double check and make sure your needle is not on the outside here. Okay, then you can just snip your yarn off. Alright, so your pumpkin is complete and ready to sew onto your scarf, except we need to create a stem and a little curlicue. Okay, for the stem, go make a slip knot and just place it on a peg somewhere. We're just going to use a few pegs. Going to E-wrap 4 pegs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come to the front and purl those 4 pegs. Okay, that's row 1. And then E-wrap. That's row 2. Row 3. And row 4. And we are going to call it done with row 4. So we need to so enough tail, since this is such a short little thing that we're going to do, we need enough tail to complete that, plus to sew it onto our pumpkin. We're going to do a flat bind off. So now we are finished with the pumpkin stem. And we can weave this top in. Weave that top strand in. Okay, and then we have a tail to sew it onto our pumpkin. And it will sew on about right there. Now we need to make a little curly cue. And so okay, so we're going to use 3 pegs for this. You don't need much of a tail, just enough tail that you can weave it in. Afterwards, we're going to place this on peg 3. Okay. We're going to wrap peg 1, okay, this is peg 3. Wrap peg 2, wrap peg 1. Wrap peg 1 again, and just kind of go over behind peg 2, wrap around it, wrap around peg 3. Now we're going to yarn over on pegs 3 and 2. Leave 2 loops on peg 1. Okay, push your loops down a little bit, come around peg 1, and then wrap around peg 2, and wrap around peg 1 over here. I'm sorry, I might have said that in the wrong order. Okay, on this first peg right here, we're going to always leave 2 loops on it all times. So we're going to take the bottom loop and come up over, and that still leaves 2 loops. And on these next 2 pegs, yarn over. Okay, so here we go. When we're going in this direction, we do not wrap the first peg. When we're going in this direction, we wrap all 3 pegs. So we're going to be going in this direction, so we wrap these 2 pegs and yarn over. Okay, we didn't do anything to this peg. Going back in this direction, we come around and we wrap all 3 pegs. And we only take the bottom loop up over 2 loops in the peg. Okay, and we're just going to continue to do this until we get some growth back here. Remember, if you needed to slow that down, you have the ability to hit that little gear button and slow that down at the beginning of this so you can see exactly what I did. And just continue this and let your tail grow. We want a curly Q. Not a super long, but just a short little curly Q. So I will meet back up with you when I have worked enough to get some curly Q going on back here. Okay, once you have got some growth back here, it might be just straight, but you can start curling it with your fingers to help that kind of curl, and it will curl on up. And you can curl it like super, super, super tight. Like just keep curling it really tight and then let go, and it should come out something like that. So I think I have enough that has like 1, 2, 3 ringlets there. So that's good. You want to have at least that. You don't want to have too much. You don't want it to be too long, but you don't want it to be too short. You want to make sure that when it's relaxed that you do have at least 3 ringlets. Okay, and then I'm going to cut a tail. I'm going to leave a long enough tail that I can sew it on. And oops, I think I might have not left enough. Okay, but we're going to do just a drawstring cast off, because this end doesn't have to be flat. It can be pinched up. So just pop all your loops off. And this is what we have. So I'm going to weave in this little tail here. I'm just going to find somewhere to weave it in. And it is tied off already. I mean, it's a slip knot that we made. So I'm just going to weave it up in there. And pull it, snip it off. Okay. So going back to our pumpkin, I'm going to take my stem. Okay, I don't want the stem right at the edge. I'm going to bring it down about 2 rows in. And so I'm going to go through the orange right beside my stem, because I do want to make sure that corner gets sewn on really well. And I just went all the way through on this because it is going to be the inside of a pocket. Then I'm going to go in through the brown, and I'm going all the way out my orange. Pumpkin. And then I'm just poking back through on the back and coming in the next stitch over. And I'm going to go back through this one just to make sure that that is all sewn on really well. And I'm going to come back through the orange into close to that last stitch. Now I'm going to go through the orange beside the stem to make sure that corner is on there well. And now I'm going to come back up closer to the top of the pumpkin and come into the stem a little bit higher up. And I'm just going to sew across the top of the pumpkin onto the back to secure that stem a little bit better. So when your hands are going in and out of the pockets, it doesn't bend that down or tear it up or, whatever. We just want to make sure it is secured on there pretty well. Especially the edges. Okay, then check yours and see if you're happy with that. And if you are, then just come through and tie that off. Okay, once you feel like it is secure, snip your yarn. And there we have our pumpkin stem. And we need to sew on our little curly Q. And you can just kind of hold it different places. See what you are comfortable with. See where it looks good. Because everybody's might be a little bit, slightly different shape. I think I'm going to put mine right here. Okay, so we want to, I'm going to come right on the edge of my stem. And I'm just going to hold that down right here and come up through a little higher area. And just go in and out a few times to secure that on really well. And I'm going to go down a little further. So I want to secure it closer to the bottom of the stem a little bit. And I'm just kind of going through the orange now to secure that on there. Okay, so then just kind of manipulate it, look at it, see if you feel like yours is secure, or if you need to come back up and go on the side there a little bit. I feel like I might need to. Okay, and once you feel like your stem is pretty secure on there, come into the back and tie it off a couple of times. Okay, and then you can weave in your end, snip your tail, just whatever you're comfortable with. So there we have our pumpkin pocket with a little curly Q. Okay, so next we need to sew it onto our scarf. Okay, I have a pumpkin pocket sewn onto the scarf, as you can see here, and it's open at the top for your hand or something. And then I have this one that we are fixing to sew on now. So I want to start on this side and just go all the way around to here. So I'm going to just tie this yarn in. I'll tie it into the back side and knot that really well. Okay, and then I'm just going to clip this because it is on the inside of the pocket. Okay, and I'm just going to place it on there and try to get it like I placed this one. Like I see 2 rows, and that's sewn on the 3rd row, so that's what I'm going to go for over here. And just hope that it ends up kind of the same-ish. It probably won't be exactly the same, but, you know, just in a roundabout way. So I'm just going to pick up a top stitch. I'm just going to pick up top stitches and kind of just whip stitch this on. And I do want to get the corners, like this corner and this corner, really well so that it doesn't, pull. So I'm going to put a couple of extra stitches right here just to make sure these corners are secure and they don't, come undone or sag too much or whatever. And I'm just going to tie this off to make sure it is on there really well. Okay, now I'm just going to start going around the pumpkin. Just whip stitching it on there. I'm just picking up, a top stitch, not going all the way through the scarf, so that the other side, still looks nice. And I'm going to come on around down here. I'm going to go in a row to pick up stitches since this kind of curves in. Okay, there we go. There is our pumpkin pocket scarf. We have a pumpkin on each side. All right, I hope you'll enjoy making this, and I'd love to see pictures. This is a great scarf for the fall. Actually, you know, depending on where you live, of course, this would be great for September, October, November. So I'm excited to get this finished, and I'm excited to get this out to you so that you can make one also. And I would love to see pictures if you do. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you all very much. Thank you, guys.